So I had a bit of a conundrum as I was preparing for this, because normally I would stand at these events or others, and I try to generally defend the TV industry. I mean, we at FreeWheel have spent our entire life promoting TV, making sure that as a group the industry is successful. And I thought this time today I'd take a little bit of a different approach, and we'll see at the end whether this works or not. And really, the title, Will TV See It Coming, should really be, Will TV See It Coming This Time? And you'll see at the end why I meant it. But I was preparing for this, I came across this fantastic article written by an Aussie business school professor called Mark Ritson. And he was claiming that over the last sort of 10 years, we together, collectively, our industry, had witnessed, it was probably the largest shift in strategy and probably also the most successful that our industry had ever seen. And that got me thinking, because if this was a very successful outcome for that particular company, and you'll know who I'll talk about in a minute, chances are that they've done it in one particular area of our industry, they will do it again in video. And they'll apply the same tactics, but at a speed that's much more rapid, and with a scale that's much more massive. And therefore, what I'm trying to get out of today is a few things. One, it's my own perspective of what this story is about and what's happened in the last 10 years. But most importantly, it's kind of give a few pointers to premium video publishers and TV companies. I'm a bit of a chess player, and I like to put myself in other people's heads sometimes. Not too much, but... and really that's what I've tried to do in this particular instance. And so my story starts with this young man who nobody knows. And it starts 10 years ago. And at the time, Facebook was generating annual revenue just over $150 million, something it makes today in just over 48 hours. And back there, this is exactly 10 years ago, which is why it's interesting. He said, for the last 100 years, media has been pushed out to people, but now marketers are going to be part of the conversation. And they're going to do this by using the social graph in the same way our users do. And I was living in LA at the time, and I almost dropped everything to go work for Facebook, because if you're an advertiser, if you're a brand, the perspective of connecting with your users was something that had never been done. Did he mean that users were going to be part of the conversations? That people on the social network, the 150, 200 million they had at the time, were actually going to interact with brands? That was going to be a pretty significant revolution. And the story I'm about to tell is how over the next, call it 5 years, and in order to build a very successful business, yes, Facebook grew into the massive social network that it is today, but it also switched its tactic. It also switched its advertising strategy. And the original mission that it set out to do 10 years ago changed quite drastically in the next few years. And this man, who I mentioned in my opening, this really clever chap who's been studying social media for a long time, and I encourage you guys to read it, claims, and this is also what I've kind of learned to discover and like about this theory, claimed that Facebook over the last 10 years has operated the largest bait and switch strategy that advertising has ever known. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, the definition, a little bit wordy about bait and switch, is you offer one thing, change in revolution, i.e. interaction with the consumer, and then imperceptibly switch those who respond back to a brand new version of the same old stuff. So, okay, what does that really mean? We see it every day in our daily lives. Bait and switch is, I want to go to Thailand for a holiday, or actually I'm presented with something that's offering me to go to Thailand. It's a very attractive price, 5-star hotel, 7-night, book now and now only. When you actually click on it and you get to the website, here comes the switch. The offer is not available. But you still have other things that you can browse, and you still have other packages which you might be interested in. But the quote-unquote bait, which was available to you as being advertised, is different than the actual result when you click on it. And when you go back to the story about Facebook and you think of the initial advertising proposition, which they set out to do, was we were all going to start interacting with brands. We were all going to have chats about brands. We were going to include them in our conversations. We were going to talk and laugh about Starbucks and Pret. And this very humanitarian vision, quite frankly, was attractive to a lot of people. I was really attracted to it. I wanted to go work for them. A lot of advertisers, quite frankly, did the same, checked on it. But the point of this is very early on, that strategy changed as it moved from a very attractive proposition of interaction to customers to something else. And here, I like this quote a lot. I just wanted to throw it out there because I think it's just a fun quote. And Linda does have a point. I really love Linda. But in effect, it's really a different story. And the different story is that the like has its importance in the ad funnel. In fact, it has a lot of value. But it doesn't have value to generate a conversation. It has value for something else. And we all interact and we all love our social media. We all love Facebook. But the organic relationship that Facebook set out to be in the world of, quite frankly, social media advertising disappeared, died down over the years. And very quickly, the sort of audiences moved from kind of these interaction, or the pitch from Facebook moved from an interaction between consumers and brand to something a lot more linear. In fact, thanks to my good friend Marie, you can see that you're on Facebook, and it's a very linear relationship between brands and users. We're not talking about the brands as we're interacting on social media. We're actually being pushed an ad. And so what's the issue here, and what's happened over the last 5 years, or 10 years rather, but most importantly in the first 5 years, is that Facebook grew from a conversation item that attracted a lot of advertisers for the power and the relatively openness approach to something a lot more linear. And something that, quite frankly, the ad world knows a lot better, which is reach. And you can see this, quite frankly, on their homepage as they have evolved from 10 years ago. This is the original sort of Facebook ads welcome page from 10 years ago. And you can see that the message which they set out to be is very powerful. It's about connecting real customers to audiences. It's about interaction, again, with people. And you look at the same welcome page of Facebook Business or Facebook Ads sort of 5 years after that. This is sort of midway point between now and then. And it's now telling a very familiar story. It's talking about reach, and it's talking about audiences. And I'm not saying they've not been successful at creating the largest social media on the planet. And that has a ton of value, and they've been extremely successful in advertising. My point is that they've set out with an original vision of selling beautiful electric cars. But what they pumped in the market are good old diesel cars. Very, very, very much, a ton of them, but a very standard proposition, which, quite frankly, has worked great for them. But we're back to an old model. So this happened in sort of the traditional digital world. And when I looked at this, I said, well, okay, now what's going to happen with us in video? How are they going to tackle video? What are they going to do? And so this is a year ago when they actually introduced the fact that they were going to have a more distributed or more widely distributed video proposition other than in news feeds. And Sheryl Sandberg said, I'll read it because it's easier. It's definitely true that most of our advertisers are advertising on TV and advertising with us on mobile, and they should be. We've done studies that show that Nielsen our ads can be a really big complement to TV, particularly enabling you to reach people who really aren't on TV and you can't reach. And that got me thinking, because if you look back at what they did in display or traditional digital in a very, again, open way of complacence and very innocuous, this is very similar. And my view is that they're embarking on a similar sort of bait and switch strategy in video. And the bait here is relatively simple. We don't compete with TV. We're a complement to TV, but we don't compete with it. You know, for a lot of advertisers and brands and agencies, that might be a very compelling proposition. You know, I have my big brand budget on TV, and I can complement it with my Facebook campaign, which are going to reach my users and going to reach them very effectively on an individual basis. But let me introduce something they're doing different this time. And I think they're doing it because they want to go faster. They want to accelerate. They don't want to take it sort of 5 years to reach to the outcome they desire. And this is like what I call the decoy effect. The decoy effect is something quite simple in marketing again. You know, you're a rational consumer. You are in the market for a small car. Your main sort of aspects that you're after is, you know, price, size, fuel consumption. 99% of the time, the rational consumer will pick the less priced car. But now you introduce a third option. A third option which has nothing to do with the first two. And very often, actually, when you walk into a car dealership, and it's the second dealership you visit, you know, Peugeot, in this case, will do this very often. They'll introduce a third, most expensive, that has nothing to do with what you're actually looking for. And in this case, 70% of the time, people will, very rational, the same people, will switch from the cheaper car to the intermediate proposition. Now, why am I talking about cars? Because I think if you're looking at the choices that we're now facing as consumers of video, they're pretty standard, they're pretty, well, call them binary. You either have your TV experience, which is, you know, free in most cases. You're paying for your subscription, but you could get it for free. And it's got a plethora of catch-up on-demand options. But at the end of the day, it's a relatively cost-effective way to watch quality content. And then you've got a more niche option, in this case Netflix, which is a very sort of acceptable platform, costs money, but you have quality and niche content. And the point here is that Facebook, by introducing Watch sort of 3 months ago, is introducing forgot to say, most people will actually choose TV over Netflix, even though Netflix is a very successful item. But now you introduce Facebook Watch. And what this does to consumers, you know, in a very sort of elaborate way, is they'll end up favoring, and this is my own view only, we'll see a lot of customers go after these paid platforms when they now have a third choice in front of them. And I believe Facebook is doing this for a very rational and sane reason, which is that they probably think Netflix is an easier competitor to TV first. They want to get these eyeballs. Start with a, you know, ad-backed, niche content, high-value proposition. To undermine TV, you go after its biggest competitor. Because its biggest competitor, really, all it has is the same distribution channel as them, and it's got deep pockets, which are funding content. So, you know, the switch here is a little bit trickier, and apologies if you're not following me on this journey. But Mark Zuckerberg stood up 3 months ago and effectively said something that any TV executive could have said. Literally, you sit in front of, you know, we've all had these meetings and we've all heard, you know, either the head of programming or anybody or at a TV company say the following. For the video tab, the goal we have for the product experience is to make it so that when people want to watch videos, when they want to keep up to date on what's going on with their favorite show, and the N is on a weekly basis. Now, you know, in the original quote, there's a little bit more to it, but it's a TV quote, and that's the point. They're now flipping their strategy from a, hey, we're great, we're going to complement TV, to a very TV-like linear approach that's going after repetition, reach, frequency, audiences. And it's a very powerful interface. I mean, in fact, it's, I'm sure it'll be very successful. But again, it's not just going to be a mobile complement to TV. It's going to be very much TV. And so when you actually think, I said at the beginning, I spent a lot of time thinking about what TV companies and what premium video companies can do to, quote unquote, beat this phenomenon or at least react to it. And the point about we need to see it coming now, and we need to do a few things. Or TV companies, we're not, but we support a lot of them, need to do a few things now. And the first is, there's two, but one, become global and partner up. The partner up aspect is relatively simple. We live in a number of local markets with a finite set of inventory, with, quite frankly, the same competitors. In the UK, you've got ITV, you've got Sky, you've got Channel 4, who've been living in this ecosystem for a while. And I think now the industry's realized that in order to grow that scale locally and be competitive to these platforms, they have to partner up. But not only on a local basis, on a pan-European or global basis to offer a relative scale. Both the large digital players go to agencies after a global budget. And what's remaining when it comes down to a local market is 90% of it. Why not tackle it at the source? Why not go see the global agencies and say, we have a global network that's made up of a number of partners like ProSieben, TF1, and Mediaset have done by launching European Broadcaster Exchange. Scale, of course, and I know all the premium video companies, and particularly in TV, are starting that. Aggregation, building up their network to package with their traditional in-app, set-top box, on-demand inventory. Point here is that as you're offering premium video experiences to your users on your own platform, it probably means at some point you need to aggregate other contents, whether it's from MCNs, whether it's a true aggregator strategy on your platform, that needs to happen. I could spend hours talking about this, and I do normally at some of these events, and I think I've exhausted the subject, but I know, this will be the topic of other presentation today, but it's really critical as we move down into a world where effectively we've got competing channels on all ends, that we, and as a tech company, we need to build the tools to do that. But as premium video publishers, and particularly TV companies, your biggest asset is your TV inventory. And your biggest asset is the fact that people will look at your content over a weekly period, over a 2-week period, and that's TV. It starts today with live streaming. How do you package, how do you integrate live streaming into a standard, more digital offering when it's really TV, but on a different screen? And a lot of people are now doing that. Fox is very adamant. It says, in a response to, again, Sheryl Sandberg saying, we have 10 Super Bowls on Facebook every day, Joe Marchese stood up and said, we have 700 Facebooks every day. So you can see that this interesting dynamic of comparing reach and frequency is starting, and we can only do it, or TV can only do it, if it packages linear and digital. Trading models. So no surprise to you, we invested massively into building up our sort of automation trading model. Other people call it programmatic, but I've been told not to mention this word today. The point here is that we, as a premium video owner of inventory, there's a shift. The agencies are, asking for an automated process that is easy to trade. And we have to provide the tools, but you also have to adapt. But you have to do it in a compliant way. I mean, TV is TV. It's got rules. I'm not going to get into them today. I've spoken at length at numerous events about them. You do not treat TV content like you treat a pre-roll in front of a 2.5-minute video. However, you need to embrace these new trading models. Why? Because in order to gain liquidity in a marketplace that's relatively mature, this will help your business, we believe. And then finally, and I won't go into this too much because Jakob's coming right after me, but this has to happen. You know, this is something that we have to collectively push in the right format. This is probably not the right quote, but the point is that in this country in particular, Sky has been very successful at launching its proposition, or 3 years ago now. And it's going to continue. You know, we're starting to see in the US, you know, we're starting to see the agencies not coming up with new trading models to effectively tackle this. And the point is, if you go back to, you know, the switch model that Facebook's going to operate, yes, it is going to be about reach and audiences, but it's going to be about data. And we're not going to win that battle unless we propose a unified model. So what are we, you know, and this is going to be my only pitch slide. Well, really not so much, but what we're doing about it at FreeWheel for our customers is really focused around three things. The fastest growth of inventory in the US and in Europe to a certain extent has been live streaming. And this has kind of started a cascading effect around how do I treat, you know, dynamic insertion of advertising into my live streaming linear feed, which is effectively either the same as TV or something different. And this has now started to cascade down into how do I treat linear? How do I start to address and unify this pool of inventory and give publishers, but also agencies, the right trading platforms, the right media planning tools, the right reporting tools so that it's all viewed as one pool of inventory. The other one is we talk about data a lot. We're not a data platform, but you have collectively a lot of data as publishers. We need to allow execution around all of this data set on any currency and any data form. And as a technical platform, we cannot take we have a view as to who does it well and who doesn't do it so well. I'm not going to say that today, but the point being that we need to allow for our customers, the premium publishers, to trade on any data and any currency. And there's a big challenge out there today, and you know, I'm sure this will be part of the discussion on measurement and currencies, which I won't address, but we are putting together the tools so that anyone can trade on any currency, on any screen, of course, and in any sales fashion. We bought Sticky Ads last year. We've incorporated them into FreeWheel now. And really, when we think about a video platform, we think about it as a combination of an automation business and an I/O business. And we don't make any difference anymore. We've just applied what was our common set of rules in an I/O business on a programmatic platform. And so this long presentation was to say, you know, instead of actually thinking about it from what do we what do you as premium video publishers need to do, I wanted to give a little bit of a perspective because I think we haven't spent enough time putting ourselves in, you know, these so-called digital giants' heads and how they're approaching their ad tactics. And from my point of view, it was very useful. And again, I encourage you to read and watch Mark's presentation because they are really, well, quite frankly, very canny, but very useful. And I think that we are going to see over the next 2 to 3 years this switch in strategy. And it's not going to be about, hey, is Facebook stealing or is Facebook taking away dollars from TV and moving them into digital? This isn't the game anymore. They're coming into TV and coming after TV dollars. With that, I am done. Thank you very much.